Welcome to Authenticity Unleashed. I am your host, Pam Rader, and I am so excited today to have an incredibly special guest, someone that I was in awe of and had an extremely profound experience with and in the presence of, and witnessed her cause profound experiences for multiple people. I have Dr. Divi here today, and Dr. Divi is a spiritual teacher and healer, and I'm just so grateful to have you here on the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And it was so lovely to meet you at that event too. So thank you.
Thank you. So for our listeners, let's share a little bit. I'll have you share a little bit about what you do, because for some people, what you do seems a little bit woo-woo. Yeah?
Yeah, sure. Okay. I'll take that. Yeah. What do I do? Okay. So I'm a family doctor turned intuitive coach turned spiritual teacher. So I use intuition to help me help people.
Mm-hmm.
So what I always say to people is I'm trained to see, sense, feel energy. And most people don't realize that their thoughts are creating their reality. So I use intuition and my connection to the non-physical energy to get a sense of what's blocking you, and then teaching you processes and techniques to move those blocks out of the way so you can live the life you want.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
You say it so succinctly, and they're just like, it ain't no thing. That's a giant leap to go from being a family doctor in the medical culture, probably in your family, shocked people when you wanted to walk a different path. Will you share a little bit about what that was like for you?
Sure. So it's been a gradual thing. And I always jokingly say I don't tell my family, though I've got a website. And I don't really talk about what I do with my family. Like a lot of people, I don't live near my family. I'm out west, they're out east. So yeah, I graduated very young. I graduated when I was 25. So everyone in my family are doctors of some sort. My first step out of medicine was actually to teach yoga and run yoga studios.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a more of a gradual step. So that shocked them. Then I went back to medicine and started doing this work kind of on the side about 16, 17 years ago. And I told them, but it met some resistance. And then sort of just said, it's okay, I'm still a doctor. And I still had a foot in that door, so it was no big deal. Then as I quickly increased this, I didn't go back and tell them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my parents still think I work as a doctor, but my parents are 90, so it's okay.
Let them think that, right?
And my siblings know what I do, but they've never been to my event. So it's not like, but it's really hard to even describe, kind of like you said, Pam, what do you do? I'm like, here, I'll try to explain it, but yeah.
Well, the Divi experience is what I was introduced to it as, what you do, by some coaches. I was at a mastermind in Mexico with a group of coaches, lovely people, open people, willing people, such a beautiful environment. And you came highly recommended and revered by Dan and Alexander, who were putting on the event. And still, you blew me away, my expectations. And what really got me was your level of authenticity. How you just showed up. I fucking love that you swear. I loved how you're just a truth teller through and through, but you did it with such kindness and generosity and compassion. And there were so many shifts inside of a few hours that I was left blown open, really. So how did you come to do these? I would imagine you probably worked one-on-one with people first.
Yeah.
And honed your skills, and then what made you decide to do experiences like this, like a group experience?
So you're right. I started my one-to-one business about 17 years ago, very gradually on the side of my medical business. And then it pretty quickly took off. So I had a full-time business for about a decade and a half. And then during that decade, we had COVID and all that stuff during that decade and a half. And during that time, I met Alexander through somebody else. And Alexander, who was one of the people that Pam was speaking about, who ran the retreat, he used to run a different company that's a mastermind company, and they would invite me to teach their event. So they've seen me teach, and so it basically started up that some of my one-to-one clients would invite me to their groups, and then those skills just kept getting honed, right? And then what happened was about 2 years ago, when my son moved out to university, the energies that run my life and run my business said, "You're going to do this full time. You're going to teach full time." It's like, okay. So then the doors just started opening more and more to teach. And so, yeah, it was the skill set of being a family doctor, being able to hold space for people there, then being a yoga teacher, and then doing one-to-one work, and taking all those skills, plus a lot of trainings I've done over the years, and kind of mushing them all together like in a blender. And I
Hmm.
appreciate what you saying about the swearing and the authenticity. I really appreciate that, because I always say I don't know what I do. I mean, yes, you may consider it woo, but I think a lot of people actually I think it's quite normal. Like I was out to dinner with some friends last night. They're like, why doesn't everybody talk like this?
Right?
Right? And it's like, yeah, this is how we should be thinking, quote unquote. So yeah.
Wow. So the reason I want to bring up these events is because I really want people to know what you do, and if like for sure we'll talk about where they can find you at the end, but this experience with a group of people, it's like nothing else. It's really incredible, and I wish for every human being that they would have the opportunity to spend a few hours with you and in your presence. I want to share something with you about that experience from my perspective, and a little serendipity. So first off, I didn't realize that you were a yoga teacher and owned yoga studios. I also own yoga studios, and
Oh,
I've trained
crazy.
yoga teachers for years. And I'm just kind of in this transition now, mostly coaching full time and training coaches, and kind of a one foot in that world and one foot over here. And, so I can relate to where you were there. When during this teaching session that you were doing, I hadn't even told you my name. And you said you were terrible with names, and you said, Pam's afraid to step forward. Here's the thing, I've done a lot of work like this and been to a lot of events and different things. So it pissed me right off. I was so fucking mad. And I've done enough work to know that that's because you hit the nail right on the head. And so I was like, ooh, there's the mad shit. She's right about something. Where is that? And so I started asking and looking. And then you said, Kali is in the space. Kali is here, and she's saying, stop it. Now you can see behind me, my book that's my memoir. It's called Through the Cracks. I wrote an entire chapter about how Kali stalked me for years, and I thought she was coming to consume me, but she had come to birth me. And I was like, there's no other yoga teachers here. Nobody knows who Kali is. I don't know what that's all about. So then I came home, and my co-facilitator at my yoga studio, he had just been to Nepal, and he said, I brought you a gift. And it was a Kali statue.
Wow.
And now, interestingly, I asked Kali, who is, for those who don't know, the goddess of destruction, loosely, to show me truth, to dispel, and, be careful what you wish for, right? I was like, whoa, I had some profound disruptive things come up. And as painful as it is, I'm so grateful. And I just kept seeing like the connections between the little things that you said, not just to me, but everybody else, and how they're all lining up. You must hear this over and over and over again and all the time. What are some of the most profound experiences that people have shared with you about what's happened for them?
So I don't know if they shared this to you before the event, so because I don't know what Dan Alexander said to you. But one of the there's been a bunch, but I'm just like I can give you a bunch. I'll just give you a few. One of the events I ran for Dan Alexander, I was working with a woman there, and again I don't know if they shared this with you, and I didn't know that she had fertility issues.
Mhm.
And in that, and she was talking about some sexual abuse stuff, and then whatever happened, I vaguely remember what happened. The Christ consciousness came in. We did some energy work on her, took her into this level of forgiveness, and very shortly after she got pregnant. And 4 or 5 women in that same retreat got pregnant within a few months.
Wow.
So whatever blocks they had, we released. That's just one example.
Yeah.
In fact, when I first started teaching, I used my old medical patients used to come to my workshops.
Yeah.
And one of them, and again, I don't remember the same thing. I had no idea that she had infertility because I was in my left brain. And as the doctor, I knew she did, but I forgot, in that moment. Did some energy work on her pelvis. Then about 6 weeks later, she came in as a patient saying, "Hey, I'm pregnant."
Mhm.
Had clients with end stage cancer, gone like stuff like that has happened for me. I've
Mhm.
had people that's kind of deeper stuff, but I've even had people who come to events and they're having massive relationship dynamics.
Yeah.
Somebody who came to the last Dan Alexander event that I ran for them,
Yeah.
another coach who wasn't at the event you were at. Anyways, he had some relationship issues when I met him at the event in Chilliwack. That was in the spring, I think, of this year. And
Uh-huh.
then he just sent me a message. And since the spring event, he's come to one of my retreats and something else. I don't remember what the other thing he did with me. Anyways, to one of my retreats. And then he messaged me a few weeks ago saying, Divi, it's been 6 months since our retreat. My whole life has changed.
Yeah.
Right? New
Wow.
partner, new this, new that, new business. And so those are just a couple examples. I mean, I could keep going,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's knowing that the more work we do in here, the more the life changes. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I did. I don't remember calling your name. I don't remember calling. Like, I don't remember any of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But obviously you do. And that's the whole
Yeah.
key.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And do you get common messages from spirit? You know, you're channeling. I gather
Yeah.
channeling. And is there a is there a particular sort of general message that spirit wants us to know?
Get out of your way. Get out
Hmm.
of your way. You're not this body. Your body is the access point for spirit to have spirit's experience in this human lifetime.
Hmm.
So your loves, your passions, things you're called for
Hmm.
is to have spirit enter and have the shift of the consciousness of the planet. That's probably the most common one I hear. And right now the common ones are around women and men, inviting in the mother energy and a lot of the forgiveness work and healing the feminine.
Hmm.
So there's like lots of layers, but the biggest message is the divine has not left you. You're not alone.
Right. Do you believe that we choose our lives?
On a soul level, yes, 100%. We choose all the contrast, all the crazy crap. Yeah.
Right. So in the moments when it's difficult, is it helpful for us to remember that we chose this to learn, to evolve, to grow?
100%. And it's helpful to remember that there's energies we can talk to, drop
Hmm.
to our knees, which a lot of us don't do anymore, ask for help. Yeah.
Do you have rituals like that? Obviously you must pray.
I meditate, pray most days, but the prayer isn't from a place of I need this God, but from prayer is let me be of service to you.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
I sage before I
oh,
see any
lovely.
clients, and I ask to be a clear channel and to be of service in sharing the beautiful human that I have the privilege of sharing time with the world. So I think that energy is so important. It's been profound in my life, the shifts that have happened through doing energy work. Do you find resistance to this kind of work?
So what's really interesting for me is the answer is no, because those people don't come into my door.
Yeah.
But because I'm so normal, I don't call the work I do woo. I tend to attract in clients who you would consider normal, lawyers, CEOs, whatever. And they come because they want to feel better,
Mhm.
but they don't ask how I know what I know.
Right.
But they're blown away. Like the average, when I used to coach one to one, the average client would say, coming to see me for an hour was like 10 or 20 counseling sessions,
Yeah.
right? People
Yeah.
say when they come to my events, it's like 5 years of therapy,
Yeah.
right? Because they don't know how I know what I know, and they don't care
Mhm.
because they're there for the shift.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I have been working on myself is trusting. I used to sort of give my power away in ways to teachers and healers and think that they were the only ones who could do this. And what Joe taught me is that we can all do that. We can all build that muscle, hone that skill, and tune in. And I have found in my coaching practice the same thing. I don't know how I know things, but now I have I can discern whether it's coming from my brain or from somewhere else. And I say, it's not from me, but it's for you. And I
Right.
just have that little discernment there. And the more that I speak it and it's dead on, the more I trust it. And so, how can people tap into their own intuition?
So I'll tell you about my story briefly. My intuition went up 21 years ago when I was pregnant, and then a lot more when I was breastfeeding. And I would just know things, right? And just like you're speaking about, just know things. So I did 3 trainings for intuition, never thinking I would do this as a career, which then I did. And now so Divi, if you ask Divi that question, I would say get trained,
Hmm.
right? But if you don't want to get trained, cool. You just want to learn some basic steps at home. Meditate, number one. Meditation is like the alphabet. Like if words was intuition, um, the alphabet is meditation. So it's like the string that puts the words together. I have a book called You Don't Look Psychic that I co-wrote. Yeah, that I co-wrote a few years ago. That's about this big, and it's all about intuition. So you can pick that up,
Ooh,
and
yeah.
or come to an intuition class that I teach. I think I have a lot of people I've trained over the years. Intuition is something that every CEO and every mom and every dad wants to learn how to use,
Hmm.
right? And if you ask Divi, she would say just get trained. And when you learn that skill set, you can use the skill set to be a great mother, to be a better coach, to be a great CEO.
Hmm.
But I'm also all about learning that skill set. But we all have that skill set. We don't, even if you meditate and wake up your skill set, the voice that stops you is your voice, like your shadow voice, your saboteur. And that's why Divi can tell you that when you're trained and you actually learn how to do it with, the only way to actually trust your intuition is to actually see it in action. So when you use the muscle with a stranger and you give readings and you're like, oh shit, how did I know that? Then that muscle gets stronger, like you just said. Mm-hmm. And so it's building that muscle. But if just somebody's sitting at home, meditate, pick up our book, trust it, and just know it's there is the answer, I'd say. And the more you trust it, the more you know you're connected.
And there's no one who doesn't have intuition.
Oh, everyone's got it. The truck driver has it. The taxi driver has it. The mother has it. But our society pushes it away from us. We're taught to trust our mind, which is useless.
I would agree with that. My mind has led me to some terrible choices. Okay, so when we develop our intuition, what do you think that is? Is it God talking to us? Is it spirits, guides, angels? What is it? What is that energy?
All of the above. Theoretically, it said that God is like the supreme force and then places spirit guides, Holy Spirit in the middle to talk to us. So I would think of it as your guides, your spirits, your angels speaking to you. Mm-hmm. We all have them. And we want to learn how to set our container up to hear them because that's their job. One of the trainings I took, I thought it was so funny. One of the trainings, the woman said, so we have all these spirit guides, and if we don't use them, they get fat and watch too much Netflix. That's a joke to say. Yeah. Use them. They're sitting around. That's what they're there for. And the other remembering is, when we die, because we will both die, we'll want to be there for our kids, our grandkids, or whoever we touched in the physical plane. Mm-hmm. Right. So if you want to connect to your ancestors in the voices of love, wake up your intuition because you will be that one day yourself.
Right. Wow. I remember Joe Fox Dreamer saying to me once, he's like, Pam, you have to ask your guides and angels. They're all sitting up there playing solitaire, waiting to be asked.
Yeah. It's a great way to put it.
So I always think of them just up there playing cards. Like, okay.
Yeah. Might as well.
Who have been some of your spiritual teachers and mentors?
Sure. So the woman I co-wrote that book with, Lynette Brown, she was my mentor for about 15 years. She's a wonderful woman. Prior to her, I embarrassingly will say I ran Bikram yoga studios for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I jokingly say Bikram, but Bikram also got me out of medicine into meditation. So I'll give him that much. But I wouldn't call him a guru of mine. I would just say he helped me to pivot. And I say that embarrassingly if you know the Bikram scandal.
I know about Mr.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Most of the yoga world does. But I knew him pre the scandal, like pre it all starting. So I'm older. And so way, way, way back before it all hit the fan. And apparently when I was around, it didn't happen. And then who knows? Who else? One of my other teachers was Doreen Virtue, though she doesn't do this work anymore. She was one of my intuition teachers way back in the day.
Wow. Yeah.
And so she flipped after that. Yeah, those are the three I would say. Put his names, yeah.
Have you ever had a scary experience with your intuition, with the energy?
Great question. Not really. I've been trained on how to deal with it if I do. We get back whatever we put out. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've often been trained if I see something scary to just put Archangel Michael or energies of love there. Mm-hmm. So I only had it happen to me once, Pam. It was, I did a mediumship reading. Mediumship was when we talk to dead people. Mm-hmm. I had a 30-year-old come into my office. This is years and years ago because he was doing drugs with a friend of us. Okay. And he was a provider of the drugs, and the drugs he provided his friend had fentanyl. They both did it together. Mm-hmm. His friend died in front of him. Mm. And then a few weeks later, he came in for a reading, or it was like within a month, he came in. And so his friend's soul came in, the one who had died. And I did the reading. And what happened was because I had such sadness and such grief and such anger and such deep sadness, that latched to me. Mm. If that made sense. So I kept seeing this guy's soul. And so I worked with my mentor and she told me to shift that. But so whatever you have is a match to what's going to come in. So if I think that's wrong, then I'll feel that negative attachment.
Right.
Right. So I had to do some work on my own thought processes to release that.
Right. I have a son who was in fentanyl addiction for a long time. Almost 15 years of addiction. And toward the end, he overdosed several times. And Joe was doing a clearing on him. And he said, Nick, you've been to the other side. And he said, yeah, I have. I've OD'd a few times. And he said, you brought something back with you. And I heard that, never really thought much of it. But I said to my husband, Nick is a completely different person. He was a child that could be miserable at Disneyland when he was little. Like he was just like Eeyore. And he is joyful and grateful and happy and funny. And at 31 years old, and I never thought we would see that. Have you had the experience with people? Do you think it's possible that they bring something back? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And I do believe, like you said yourself, it can shift. I do. I would say for the average listener that that's rarer, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I have seen and heard it. Yes, 100%. But
Yeah.
that's rarer, mostly because obviously your son is a very old soul and needs to have that experience. But the average human
Okay. Yeah.
has their own stuff in their thought process. But yeah, I have heard that.
Yeah, wow. Because I'm like that. This is a different human being. There's something, and it's not just about addictions. Pre-addiction, he was a kid, and this is not the same kid. And it's just so profound. And all of these experiences that I have with spirit guides me more and more toward it, and to more and more trust. Now, I want to talk about spirit in terms of like these messages that you share in terms of hope and what hope can do for a person. And I'll share for my son, he was told, I see you holding a baby, being handed a baby. And my son was in a fentanyl haze when he was told that. And he said to me, though, later, Mom, I never thought to think of myself in any other way but a junkie. And when I could see that there was another door that I could walk through, I started to think maybe I could change. And so these messages that you share, I guess the question is like, how important is it for all of us to hold space for other people's greatness, for their healing, for their wholeness, and how much power does that have?
I believe it's everything because we have our own unconscious, conscious patterns that think just this, like a small box.
Mm-hmm.
But then if somebody says, I see this in you,
Mm-hmm.
then what's possible?
Mm-hmm.
Then you can step out of that. It's such a beautiful story about your son. Mm-hmm. And I think, to be honest, that's what coaching is all about, mm-hmm. is to hold the space for another for their dreams, because our dreams are spirit speaking through us. Mm-hmm. And your son in that case wasn't able to dream, mm-hmm. but his soul obviously had a different intention. Mm-hmm. And so hearing that soul speak and say, hey, you're capable of so much more, mm-hmm. is like the energy pulling you forward. Mm-hmm. Right? Because of the ego, the unconscious pattern, you just say, nope, this is all you're good for. You're just a fentanyl addict. You're just going to stay there.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I love that story. That is so incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty great. His biological father was in addiction, and I had to try to escape when my son was young, and it turned into like an episode of Cops, and he went to prison, and it was, all of that. So my son had a, trauma from a very young age.
For sure.
And I braced against it, and I look and I think, I know my energy was part of that, because I was like, yeah. And it's not like a guilt thing or anything. I'm just aware how energy works. And I was like, yeah, me bracing for him to become an addict like his father was part of the problem. And so when people ask me, because I do a lot of work in that world with parents that are struggling, and they ask me, well, what should I do? And I say, don't brace.
Right.
Don't brace. Don't try to control, manage, hold the space for your child being whole and complete and perfect. Somebody's got to hold it for them when they can't hold it for themselves. And I hope that serves people,
Yeah, I agree with you totally. I mean, the analogy I'll use, as silly as the analogy might sound, when you have a 1-year-old who's starting to walk, because that's typically the age, 9 months to a year that they start walking. Most parents don't look at their kid, in fact, no parent does, and goes, you're not going to walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing, right?
Wow.
Every thought you think is manifestation, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't have an exact same situation, but my husband comes from a family of addiction as well. Mm-hmm. And so I could look at my son and go, I'm scared, and go, yeah, he's fine. Because my husband didn't fall into that.
Right.
Right. So that's a choice I make minute to minute to minute. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that took me a long time. I actually had to realize there was nothing to do but just love him. And it was like, just what do I need to do to just love him right now? What do I, stop trying to control, stop trying to, and that's what actually led me to my transformation, which is, so I'm deeply grateful for the experience. I wouldn't wish it on any parent. And I'm so grateful because I feel like it tore me open in such a beautiful way. And do you believe that people who have maybe what are perceived to be greater struggles than some, do you believe that those struggles are catalysts to us opening, becoming more, closer to God, remembering who we are? I don't know.
100%. I mean, they say that you come into the human body to forget that you are a connection to the I am.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you forget, then depending on what your life is here for, you're going to have different contrasts or different catalysts
Mm-hmm.
that we have to heal
Mm-hmm.
to return to the truth that we are God and have never left. So one of the catalysts for a lot of people, for example, is relationships. I'm alone, no one loves me.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can manifest that person by thinking you're alone, which will never manifest the partner you want.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can manifest the person by saying, no, the divine is here, and then you'll manifest the perfect lover. And so so the catalyst might be lover, bank account, and those are the three main areas where our catalysts are. And so, so we have to hit those rock bottoms to reach out.
So we have to make peace with money, with love, and with our mortality.
You nailed it.
Okay. Yeah. And if we stay connected or we seek connection, I just call myself a seeker. I went to church, but I'm not religious. I think Buddha, God, Allah, creator, to me, it's all the same. Is it like, it's this energy to me?
100%.
Just a way that we understand them, a way that we understand something. Yeah. Okay.
And I think right now, if I look at society as a whole, a lot of us are stepping out of religion, the religion dogma. Mm-hmm. And right now, in the time of the planet, there's still some friction towards accepting spirituality instead of the religious dogma, but we're bridging it. And I'm sure that in 50 years, 100 years, that bridge won't be as strong because we won't have as many, Catholic, Hindu, Muslim hangovers. And so we'll just accept that there is an energy out there. Right. And so as more of us evolve into that and step out of the hardship of all this fear-based thoughts, then say in 100 or 1,000 years, what will we be living? Totally different.
Wow.
Yeah.
That just kind of prompted me to think about astrology. I don't know a heck of a lot about it. I lean into it and try to learn, but I'm by no means not even close to any kind of expert. What's your take on how the astrology affects all of this?
I'm exactly like you. I'm not an expert at all, but there is some science, so to speak, behind the planetary, where they at and what our experience is. But I think there are certain people who hinge their whole life on that. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, can be a bit of a loophole for people. Well, Saturn says I shouldn't do this right now.
Right.
But is that an excuse for not stepping forward? Right. Because we can use anything as a hinge, right? Or as a crutch. But I think there's definitely some validity out there, but I just don't put my basis on anything like that other than my connection to spirit.
I think it's like that with anything. It could be astrology. I used to chase spiritual teachers. Like I had gurus and I put them on pedestals. And then one day I kind of woke up and thought, these are just people and I have the power. And I stopped giving my power away and just looked at them as like people that I can learn from.
That's it. Just like each other. And then they can learn from you. I'm with you. I did exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And then when we realize, wait a second, what am I doing? But that's a reflection of a shadow in us that says we're not enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It's like I heard it said it's like spiritual cocaine.
That's a great expression. Yeah. I love that. That's
we
so
start
good.
Chasing the next high and the next teacher who's going to give us that aha feeling. But I mean, what yoga says, what we seek is within us, right? So I had an experience that I want to get your take on. I've been asking my guides, angels, and spirits to hear more clearly and see more clearly and to be able to channel and open up my third eye and all of that. And I shouldn't say never, perhaps when I was a child before I maybe shut it down, but I had never in my recent memory had an auditory, like somebody actually speak to me. And so I was praying and doing this, and really being open and saying, yeah, I'm ready for this. And I went into my bedroom and I laid down and I heard a voice that was like a person was sitting right beside me. And this is me, Divi. I'm like, nope.
That's hilarious.
Is that my imagination, or is that like, or can that happen?
It 100% can happen. The only thing that blocks intuition is fear,
Mm,
right? Because they're 24/7. And you've probably heard there's a lot of meditations out there to start meeting your guides. And that one of the most common expressions that are used in those meditations is your mind is going to think you're making this up,
mm-hmm.
but you aren't. And so
Right.
you just want to, I call it, the word expression I use is pull the thread. So like look at those thoughts that cause you to go, no,
Right.
right? It's like that's the ego who doesn't want it, who's afraid of like something taking over or whatever that thought was that said no. And yet on the other hand, she said, I want it. Like you see the
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where do you think that fear comes from? What is it?
it's what I keep saying for you, and I think for a lot of people is it's like since the time we were little, we've defined what's called the little I. It's the little I that says your name is Pam, the little I that says my name is Divi,
Mm-hmm.
and the little I that says I'm this body, blah 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 blah. So if I allow this energy of non-physical to be the truth teller, then little Pam has no use.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest fear of the ego, right? Like WTF, what the fuck? Like you
Yeah.
spent your entire life, taking care of your body, proving your worth, being a mother. All of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden you're useless. Like you don't need, like you're letting this energy take her. Like,
Yeah.
and so it's that unconscious fear that you don't matter and you're not important. And this is more important. Does that make sense?
Totally. And you know, at 53 years old, I'm really confronting those things and looking at all the ways that I've sought validation and seeking the places where I'm continue to do it unwittingly, you know? And I don't know that we ever get to the bottom of it.
Right. We just keep doing it because we don't realize how deep the unconscious is.
Mhm.
So, as some people have heard of the book called A Course in Miracles, which is a big
Mhm.
text that a lot of this work is based on. The reason you can spend years and years or decades studying that book is because the unconscious is so deeply under there that says
Mhm.
you don't matter,
Mhm.
right? And that's that, right? It's like, oh well, if I let this energy in, then what, right? So,
Right. Yeah, then I have to let go of my identity. Everything that I built that I see the world through the lens of no longer applies. So we have no way to understand ourselves. Okay.
100%. And then I want to teach you two things, not teach you, but share with you two things. One is, two things, two words from A Course in Miracles. One is illusion, one is reality.
Mm-hmm.
Illusion is like everything we see with these eyes, the fault, this is what we think is real.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And reality is people often say, if God exists, why would they create this world?
Mm-hmm.
And ACIM teaches that God did not create this world.
Mm-hmm.
There's another reality that the divine created that I'm sure you have lots of miracles when you're in Mexico and have every day. And
Mm-hmm.
those miracles are moment to moment awareness as stepping away from this illusion. So,
Mm-hmm.
like when you tell your clients, can you see your son is not just an addict? You're asking them to step into the reality versus the illusion that all I see is the addict. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So using the words reality versus solution, and reality is just love. Reality
Mm.
is the I am. The reality is the essence. That's one thing I want to share. The second thing might come back in because it popped back out again, but it'll come back in. But it's deciding to see which one you want to experience, right? The
Mm.
reality or the illusion.
Right. So Don Miguel Ruiz, when he wrote the Four Agreements, he talks about like this life is a dream.
Totally.
We're just
Totally.
dreaming, but the reality is not this. I found
Exactly.
that it's so profound, but also hard to grasp. It feels like I can see it out of my peripheral vision and kind of understand it, but it eludes me a little bit.
Yeah. And okay, yeah, no, this is the second thing. There's a second thing. They often say, and most people have heard this concept, I put meaning where meaning's not there. We've all heard that.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't know that this was a cup holding pens, would I know it is? No. So if we don't put meaning on anything, then what? Like if I'm not a meaning making machine,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm looking at everything in reality like a child's eyes.
Yeah.
Like if a child had that experience, you had Pam, the child would go, who are you? What are you here for? Want to hang out? Want to play?
Yeah.
Like, do you see the difference?
Yeah.
Versus the fear of, you're going to take over me. It's totally different.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. You know, it's interesting as you say that, it's just coming to mind how many spiritual teachers have said to me that spiritual growth is actually getting back to a childlike wonder.
Yeah. Because we have less words, less thoughts, less labels.
Right. One of the questions that I ask my clients all the time when they're going through struggles, and I say, well, what are you making it mean? And then, well, so and so shouldn't have done that to me and it shouldn't have been. And I say, well, what else could it mean? Because
Yeah.
it's all made up anyway.
100%.
So we could give things any meaning we want. And why don't we pick the meaning that makes us feel good?
100%. But I think so many people
How
are so
important are
addicted.
our emotions
Oh yeah,
in what we attract?
they're everything because our emotions are like the magnetizing force to everything that comes in,
Okay.
right? So, you wake up in the morning and you have a hole in your socks
Mm-hmm.
and then you're angry and
Mm-hmm.
then the coffee's cold. No shock.
Mm-hmm.
And then the car, you get red lights the whole way. No shock,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because emotions magnetize to you thoughts and events. Or if you woke up in the morning, you're like, oh, I'm so blessed to be alive. And people do this on Saturdays. I'm so blessed to be alive. It's why people love weekends because
Mm-hmm.
they wake up in that emotion.
Mm-hmm.
They have freedom. And then everything that happens to occur after that is freedom.
I wake up and do that every day. The first words I utter, not out of my mouth, but in my brain, are thank you. Every time I wake up. And before I got on the call with you, you played a song for us when we were
Oh,
there.
yeah.
You played I Am Light, which is
Yeah.
beautiful, but I'm so blessed. That is my jam.
Yeah.
I love it. I needed to shift my energy before I got on here with you. And I was like, oh, that's perfect. And I listened to it and I could feel it resonate, and something completely changes within when we elevate. Is it true that emotions they have a frequency? Is that what I understand?
100%. Every emotion is a frequency. And if you read the book Power versus Force by David Hawkins, he actually has a scale, a consciousness scale.
Okay.
And so he puts the number, say 500 is the number he uses for love.
Mm-hmm.
And 1,000 is, say, enlightenment, Buddha mastery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then 200 is the average frequency of the planet, which is guilt, fear, resentment, anger, 200 or lower.
Whoa.
And so there's actually, so yeah, every thought, emotion has a frequency. And we emit it and we get back thoughts and experiences that match that frequency.
So this then amplifies to me the importance of the people you surround yourself with.
100%. 100%. Because if you're all now having, that's true and also not true. I'll speak to that because you can't just surround yourself with like-minded people that, we live in a world of, right? Because then we're living on islands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what the course would teach us is if I'm around somebody who's feeling guilty, say in 200,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm stay vibrating 500 love, then my job there is that this person who's feeling guilty or angry or mad at me, this person is reflecting something in me. Cool. Chance for me to do some forgiveness, which is the main tool. Let me forgive that thought because they're just reflecting something in me.
Mm-hmm. You said something that I've shared this with a few people since I've been back, but the way that you worded it, I've done a lot of forgiveness work, and I thought I had forgiven all kinds of things, but you said, forgive yourself for ever having the thought that there was anything wrong. Forgive yourself for having the thought that you did something wrong or that you could ever do something wrong. It was something like that.
Yeah.
And I had never, something just like pinged for me. And I thought, no wonder forgiveness is so hard, because there's still this thing like, if I did that and it's bad and I forgive myself, it's still there. That thing is still there. But when we approach it from the thought that I could ever do anything wrong in God's eyes,
Totally.
that was just a game changer. It was magical. I still can't quite wrap my head around it, but I'm meditating with it. And so such a beautiful, profound thought.
Love that. Yeah, I love that. I often, everyone has different definitions of forgiveness, and you're 100% right. That's why forgiveness is so hard. But the definition I love the most is forgiveness is returning to who you truly are and the essence of God.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have had an affair and you're beating yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's look at why you did that and why you're beating yourself up. Well, you did that because you were looking for love. Why were you looking for love? Because you didn't feel loved. Oh, that's the part that needs forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because the downstream of having the affair is like just something you did. God isn't holding that against you. You are. But you have to know the originating thought.
Right.
That I need something outside of me to validate my experience on the planet. And I'm going to forgive that.
Okay. Got it. So the thought that led us to the action,
Exactly.
the thought that is that I am separate from God and I need something outside of me to be well.
Exactly. Like if I look at somebody who's showing up heroin right now, if I use that example, one of the thoughts might be, I need something to feel better.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So the universe spirit put heroin or cocaine on the planet to assist people, right? There's nothing wrong, but let me just forgive the thought that something outside of me needs to make me feel better.
Right.
So
Wow. That's such an unlock. That's such an incredible tool. Do you think that I keep just getting like this. I feel like somebody wants to hear this. So it's like, why is there war on the planet? The Ukraine and Russia right
yeah,
now, like there's so much, contrast. But if all of our spirits and guides and angels are here and we can all vibrate and we're all God, why is there war on the planet?
every judgment we make against another is war.
Yeah.
We're just seeing it on an escalated level. But as
Mm-hmm.
soon as I judge my husband, I've created war.
Yeah.
As soon as I judge myself, I've created war.
Yeah.
So we are seeing an illusion that I am separate. So if I'm mad at my husband, I'm actually mad at myself for something. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not willing to forgive that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. My teacher, Baron Baptiste, he said in his book, The 9 Practices of Being a Power, he said, we throw around a himsa like it's some kind of catchphrase, bumper sticker, and we think that we're so, innocent and peaceful. But he said, the moment you make someone wrong, you're committing energetic violence. He said, stop worrying about what's going on in the White House and worry about what's going on in your house.
So beautiful.
That was the
Again,
thing that changed the game with me and my son. I was like, yeah, I'm at war with my son.
exactly.
And that's not doing any good.
No different than what's going on in the Middle East from an energetic point of view.
Right.
Right?
Whoa. So many good things, Divi. Oh my gosh. So if you could give one message to our listeners that you would like to leave them with, what would you say?
Really simple. You are love.
Yeah.
You are the I am. And the faster you figure that out, the more your life actually gets better.
Yeah.
You're
So
the
good.
I am.
So good. We're the only ones that can get in our own way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if every day you can wake up and just do a little bit of emotional and spiritual work on yourself, that's all you have to do every day.
I love it. The habit, the ritual of it, and it just keeps expanding. I know it keeps expanding in my life, and I got a long way to go, and I'm
We all
so
do. It
grateful,
never
right?
ends. It never ends.
Right. Tell our listeners where they can find you and how they can work with you, because everyone listening to this, you need to meet this woman. You need to go find her and do some work with her. It's incredible. So where can they find you?
Thank you, Pam. That's so kind of you. My website is drdivi.com, so drdivi.com. I'm planning on doing 5 retreats in 2025. So my first one's set up in Palm Springs in February. So the 5-day events are the deep dives, deeper than what you experienced. You did like basically a 1 day or 3/4 day with me.
Yeah.
So we just over 5 days, we'll take layer after layer after layer off. And so that retreat will sit in your body for about 6 months. So you will shift. If you're ready to transform your life, come. If that's off the table right now, then I would look at I have other retreats. I just don't know when and where they are next year. And that's an easy answer. And then I also offer online classes. I offer an intuition class. So different options that are available on my website. You can take a look.
Can people train with you to learn intuition?
Yeah. So my next enrollment for that is the middle of February. So it's a 6-month class online.
I looked at it. I happen to be leading a retreat in Greece at the same time that you have your in real life, but I was like on board.
And I don't know when you checked it because I just changed the dates. So it's the
I'll have
end
to check
of
again.
anyways, take a look.
Yeah.
So you can do the intuition. Maybe it was you that pulled me to change it. I don't know. But I'll offer another intake in September for that. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom and your kindness, and for the work that you share with the world, because I saw firsthand and I experienced firsthand what a massive impact it's making. And the more people that get to experience you, I know the better the world will be. So thank you for everything that you do.
Oh, thank you, Pam. And thank you for those kind words. And thank you for what you do. It's amazing.
Thanks.